Today's message came from one main thought that I've had due to my life experiences, and that one thought was, I think we dream as though we have been on this planet before. Does that make sense? Like when we dream and we have visions, we talk like we've been born here before. Like we've seen it all, and a lot of our dreams are very rigid and very restricted. Which sounds weird, right? When someone says dream, you think about something that's boundless and limitless. But when we dream, my observation is that it doesn't matter how big we think we're dreaming, it's still just a glimpse, which is why the sermon title is A Dream is Just a Glimpse. Because our dreams, my dreams, your dreams, cannot be bigger than the life that we've lived. So everything that you think you want is completely based on the life you've lived so far, and nothing else. And so even when you think you've dreamt to your full potential, your dream still falls short of what you're actually capable of doing. And that's been my experience. So very quickly, a quick story about myself. I come from a ministerial family. My dad became a minister when me and my brother were still kids. We watched him go into the ministry, and before he went into ministry, me and my brother were born in the Black Country, Dudley. Don't watch the accent. The Lord's taken me around the UK, and along the way, I've picked up a lot of stuff. So you're gonna hear Bath in the same sentence, and you're gonna have to just deal with it. I'm so sorry. It's just how it is now. But yeah, so I was born and bred in Dudley originally, right? So that's my origin point. And when Dad went to become a pastor, see, you hear that pastor? See, it's happened already. So when that actually happened, we got moved down to Bracknell. And in Bracknell, like the culture, the accent switch up was insane. Me and my brother had to go through elocution classes because my mum was upset with how we spoke. She was embarrassed by our accents. So that got erased very quickly. Knowing what's coming day to day and making sure you have the time to build the relationships and friendships with the people around you. Me and my brother did not have that whatsoever until we got to like university. Or maybe secondary school. But our whole primary school experience, I think we jumped school, you can correct me, bro, but I think six or five times we jumped primary school. And primary school is about like 6 years anyway. So it's almost like a new school for every year of primary school. So whilst in Dudley, we moved school 3 times. Then Dad became a pastor or went to be a pastor. So we moved down to South England and attended Newbold School. And that move was hard. It was very, very difficult, as you can imagine. The West Midlands was all I knew. And me and my brother were not thrilled at the idea of being uprooted after just settling in another school again. We had literally moved school a year prior and we got moved again. Whilst in Newbold, we were settling in, unbeknownst to us, because Dad was studying, he knew we were going to leave again, but me and my brother thought this was it. And again, once we had settled in, we'd made friends, lifelong friends, people that we're still friends with today. I don't know if anyone knows Jamal, he's preached here before as well. That's where me and Jamal met. So a lot of us gelled in those 3 years, and then it was time to move again. Now, I prayed a prayer. Today's all about dreams. I prayed a prayer when we moved from Dudley that God would bring me back to the West Midlands. I was 6 or 7 years old, and I was upset that I was leaving, but I took comfort in the idea that I'd get to be moved back. So I prayed a prayer at like 7, 6 years old. I was like, God, as long as you bring me back to Dudley, I can do this hiatus. I don't mind. I can do it. And as soon as I caught wind of the fact that my dad would only be there for 3 years, I was like, we can do it. We can make this work. At the end, like, I would get into like arguments with kids at school, and I'd be like, you know what? It's all right, because in about a year's time or whatever, I'm gonna be gone. So I don't have to deal with you, don't have to deal with you. If I don't like the school, doesn't matter, X, Y, and Z. And the end of the 3 years came, and Dad gathered the family together in the living room, still remember this, in the flat. And I'm waiting to hear that we're moving back to Dudley, and not just Dudley, but our old house. That's my expectation. I want to go back to where I started. I pray to God, I expect God to answer my prayers. I'm set and ready, right? And Dad turns and he's like, so we've been called to Scotland. And I'm like, is that a place in Dudley? I'm like, oh, maybe that's just like, and then I'm hearing north. I'm like, north? I said, West Midlands. That's not north. West Midlands, not north. And you know when it dawns on you, Shalaka can testify, I cried. Like, I broke. I was so devastated. Namely because I love McDonald's and I thought that Scotland had no McDonald's. But because at the time I didn't know that Scotland was, inhabited by human beings. I thought it was just mountains and sheep and things like that. So I was really upset for 2 reasons, or 2 fronts. I was just upset. No friends, no Mackies, no nothing. I was really upset. And yeah, I was just like, God, you did me dirty. Like, I said, bring me back. I'm going further away. It's like, and in fact, it's actually a sick trick as well, because we've got to cross home to get to Scotland. So really, you're teasing me, because I'm going to have to drive through my old ends and then go all the way back. I was like, you've done me dirty. And I prayed a prayer. I was faithful. I did my bit. I've been a good kid. Me and my brother excelled whilst we were at Newbold. I've been a great kid. God, you owe me the answer to my prayer. And I was very upset. Now, the irony of me being upset that I was moving away is that the friendships that me and my brother developed in Newbold are some of the most precious friendships I still hold to this day. And I wouldn't have even experienced that if God hadn't drew me away. But I'm too young to process that at this point. So we go to Scotland. Funny enough, I don't know if it's because it's a holy number or something, but again, 3 years. 3 years in Scotland, we settled in, made friends. And now if you guys know, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you stay in Scotland for a certain amount of time, if you're a citizen, you can go uni for free. So there was a perk with this one that I missed out on. So I we were there for like 3 years, and we're like, you know what? We like it here. We're getting to know all the neighbors. And if anyone knows my dad, he's a busy man. He's a busybody. So he's talking to the MPs, he's becoming friends with everybody. And he had learned to bake bread in Newbold, by the way. So he's already in that phase of his life. So he's baking for everybody. He's friends with everybody, knows everybody on the street. We've settled in. I'm calling people on the street uncle and auntie. That's the level we're at, right? And we get the news, we're moving. Again, I break again, as if it's just the exact same way. I'm just in tears. I'm like, what's the point? What's the point? I've settled down now. I don't want to go. But then my dad caveats it with, we're going back to Dudley. And you think this make me happy, innit? You think this is it. Guys, I was angry. I had outgrown my dream. And you know the irony of all of this, right? I should have mentioned this. When I prayed my prayer at 7 years old, I wrote it in a little devotional that I got gifted. And when we were leaving Scotland, my mom reproduced the devotional and showed me my prayer. And she was like, it's happening. I was like, it's too late for that. If God wanted to do this, he should have done it when we were left Newbold. Like, this is too late. It's too late for that now. But yeah, we came back, and that's how we ended up here with this congregation initially. That's how we ended up back in the West Midlands. And the journey from leaving Dudley to coming back to Dudley, mind you, I should add, we came back to the same house we left, which was quite interesting. I went back to my old bedroom, my old house, to my old neighborhood. And the neighborhood hadn't changed much, but me and my brother had changed a whole deal, obviously, having left and come back. And we started secondary school in Stourbridge, and the thing that was really significant about all of this was that the man, or the young men, sorry, that we were when we came back. Like, the things that God did with us, and I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I'm pretty confident in my father's parenting duties. And when I say my father, I mean my father God. Like, he did a good job with me. And generally, the young men that came back to Dudley wouldn't be those people if we had stayed. And I can't speak for everyone else. God takes everyone on different journeys. But I know for a fact that me and my brother, in fact, me being in front of you guys on a pulpit, it's the things and lessons I learned in those 6 years. And I'm young, I'm still young, I was very young back then, but anyone that knows me or has interacted with me and my brother and my family knows that despite being very young, I'd say we've been blessed with a wealth of experience and perspective. And that came from those 6 years spent down south and in Scotland. And that had wildly different communities, by the way, completely different communities. In Scotland, my family was the only black family in the community. When I say community, it's the equivalent of being like the only black family in like, what's a good example? Dudley, really? There was literally like, in fact, in our school, they took a picture of us because we were the first black students. Like, and put a picture of us on the wall. And they had a history, like they had a board in the school. And they were ecstatic that they had managed to grab 2 black students. When I entered my classroom for the first time, all the kids that met me had only seen black kids on TV. You know Will Smith? That was their reference point for who we were. So just for context, like that was one community, and down south, completely different. Newbold School, at the time that we were there, and that community, the most culturally diverse place I've been in my life, at least at that time. Everyone was from a different country. And it looks a lot like the audience I'm looking at right now. It was beautiful, completely different to Scotland. Again, those 6 years gave me a wealth of experience and perspective. And by God's grace, I'm going to try and give a little bit of that today as we talk about dreams. In the same way that God did answer my dream, not in the way I wanted him to answer it, but he did answer my dream. He did answer my prayer. What I saw was just a glimpse of the bigger picture. All I saw was, I want to come back to Dudley. And I couldn't understand how God could bring me back if he took me further away. Does that make sense? But he did. And he did it in a way that benefited me better. And you know what, to be candid, a lot of the guys I grew up with were in prison. If I stayed, I don't know, I might be there with them. The guys that I was toddlers and children with, prison, dead, and I see some of them on the street. And I'm like, you just don't know what God's saving you from. Do you know what I mean? And so, again, sometimes we think we know what we want when we dream. We think we know the process. We think we know how to get there. But we don't look from a bird's eye view. We just see what we can see. Now, my beautiful and dear wife gave us the children's story today regarding Joseph. And I'm going to start with the story of Joseph today. Don't panic, we are going to read the Bible right now. So in Genesis chapter 37, we get the main part of the story of Joseph that I want to focus on for the moment. And this particular passage, so Genesis 37 verses 1 to 11, this particular passage deals with Joseph relaying his dream to his family. So I'm going to read it very quickly in the hearing of everybody. Is everyone there? Yeah. Or most of you at least? Yeah, at least. Yeah, okay. So, now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. This is New King James Version, by the way. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old. Who's 17 again in the crowd? Right, so that's your reference point. Everyone look in that corner? Right, wave again. 17 years old. Was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the land was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Israel, who is Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brothers said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Look, I have dreamt another dream, and this time the sun, moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." So he told it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I, your brothers, indeed come and bow down to the earth before you?" And his brothers envied him. But his father kept the matter in mind. That's the key part. But his father kept the matter in mind. That was his father's approach to the dream, to keep the matter in mind. Now, his brother's reaction to the dream was to assume very quickly what the dream meant, and they also made an assumption about Joseph's own intentions. Now, unless you're someone that can lucid dream, which is like, people that can somehow control their own dreams, most of us, our dreams happen without consent, okay? So it's quite crazy and kind of hilarious that his brothers assumed that his dreams are the result of his own doing, like as if he's created this vision for himself. But Joseph got the dream from God. Now, again, sometimes our dreams are just glimpses. Anyone that knows the story of Joseph knows that this dream was a prophetic dream, speaking about how one day he would stand as second in command to the Pharaoh in Egypt, Egypt being the greatest empire on earth at the time, right? Joseph's dream was telling him that he was going to be in charge, and everybody, family included, mother, father, and brothers, would come to him and bow down to him, right? Now, tell me, any of you, how many of you would have deducted that reality from looking at sheaves of wheat in a field? Sometimes I think we take it for granted, like he dreamt a dream about wheat and stars, and somehow he was meant to know that that meant Egypt, which he wouldn't have seen in his life, by the way. He wouldn't have seen Egypt in his lifetime. He had no context for the reality in which his dream would be made. Joseph's a remarkable character because I think my sister said it at the back. He remained faithful. He doesn't assume to know the meaning of his dream. He just tells it. Everyone else draws up conclusions about what the dream means. Now, it seems everyone could deduct that there was something about dominion coming out of the dream. But no one knew Egypt. No one knew that actually the dominion that he was dreaming about was their salvation. They assumed it was oppression. But the very people envying him were his beneficiaries or recipients of his gift later on, right? I say that to say that sometimes, especially in church, I think we really abuse the idea of the word dream and I've got a vision from God and God told me and God showed me. Whatever God is showing you or myself, as exemplified in my story earlier, it's just a glimpse. God knows us enough that he knows if he was to show you the actual reality of the dream you're dreaming, you would just be more confused because you have no context for it yet. Literally, your dream doesn't quite, it exists, but it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just don't have context for it. And that when we understand that, it can help us when we dream, again, going into a new year. We can put less pressure on ourselves to make our own dreams manifest. Because if Joseph had had the attitude of many of us, he would have dreamt a dream about wheat and purchased a farm. That's how we behave. It's like, oh, I dreamt all my brothers' sheaves were banged up. Okay, first step, logistically, I need to get a farm, right? Clearly my dream manifests in some type of farm somewhere, or maybe I'm going to be a lead shepherd. Oh, but then that came alongside a dream about stars and the moon. Okay, maybe I'm meant to be a reader of the cosmos. I need to get studying. I need to study the cosmos. I need to be an astrologer. Okay, maybe that's where I need to be going. And obviously the two dreams take place in two completely different environments. My guy would have been lost. I would have been lost. Only God knew what that meant. And Joseph's job wasn't to solve the dream. His job was to make sure that he was faithful to God. And the reason why he needs to be faithful to God is because in his faithfulness, God would prepare him to see something he, again, had not seen yet in his lifetime. So many of us, again, we dream small. It's not our fault. We can only see so much. When we have certain dreams at night, sometimes things happen in context, in places that we're like, well, how does that tie to my life? And I think sometimes we read too much into the symbols, into our dreams. We read way too far into it. I've heard all sorts of things in church growing up that people read into and mess up their whole life because they start following a path that they've misread from God. Joseph could show us how to be more faithful in that pursuit, and to also not curse the people that get in our way. Because many of the people that are in your way are your future patients. Take care with them. Let their ignorance flourish. Let it, just because they'll need you. And before you get, hey, Matthew, leave it. Before you think to yourself, oh, they'll need me. You need them. You also need them, the people you consider your enemies. You need them too. Joseph needed his family to fulfill his purpose, and they needed him back. If Joseph had harbored anger in his heart, he would have been unfit to even see his dream come true, and then he would have been in the way of his own dream. And just to show you how important embracing the mystery of faith is, embracing the mystery of your dream. You know, Jesus declared himself that he knew not when he was coming back. Matthew 24, verse 36. Matthew 24, verse 36. He says, only my Father knows. All I've got for you is that I'm coming back. And my reward comes with me, but I don't know the time myself. Mind you, he's saying that, but our church busies itself sometimes trying to predict what Jesus himself said he doesn't know. Mind you, we consider Jesus is God, no? Okay. And he's saying that he does not know. But we think we can figure that out. If Jesus, again, like Joseph, Jesus was also in his own life faithful to God whilst he waited for his destiny to be made manifest. One of my favorite passages of Jesus' life is when he's in the desert. And a lot of people think that Jesus was tested in the desert to see if he was fit for his duty or something like that. But God makes it clear that he was already happy with Jesus when he got baptized. Right? He gets baptized and God says, "This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased." Right? Then Jesus goes into the desert after God has said he's pleased with him. So for those of you in a wilderness, it's not because God hates you. Conversely, it means God trusts you. So Jesus is in the desert, and I used to be so confused, like reading the temptations of Jesus. I couldn't quite understand what made them temptations, if that makes any sense. Like, stoned into bread, I was like, okay, big whoops, okay, cool. Then the next one was all the armies of the world Satan offered him dominion over all the kingdoms and empires of the world. And again, I thought to myself, why would that tempt Jesus? And again, why would you tempt Jesus with throwing himself off a high place in the temple? How would that be a tempting? Look, I don't understand. It wasn't until I realized that the devil was tempting Jesus with a shortcut. Everything that the devil tempts Jesus with, Jesus already has. But what Jesus didn't have was the manifestation of those things. So those things were promised to him. They would happen. They were inevitable realities. Jesus would be fed. He was fasting for 40 days, but he wasn't fasting forever. He would eat eventually. Cool. Small, that's a micro scale, small. Get a bit bigger. He's then tempted with all the empires. Right? Or is it, I can't remember which one came next. But essentially, he's tempted with all the empires in the world. And again, Jesus is destined to be King of Kings. He was already King of Kings in the desert, but the manifestation of him being King of Kings will come later. Does that make sense? As in the reality of it will come later. And being throwing himself off the temple to prove his divinity, to prove that heaven's armies were with him, people would find out soon enough. Yeah. You know when they arrested Jesus, all the men fell like dead men? Yeah. People would find out soon enough. You know, he had the situation on the Mount of Transfiguration where Elijah, and people would find out soon enough about his divinity. All the things that the devil tempted him with were things that he already technically had. The devil was tempting him with taking a shortcut. Now, if Jesus had fallen, he would have relinquished his right to the throne. And so do we when we take shortcuts. Because there's no such thing as a shortcut to God. There's no shortcut to your destiny. I've learned that the hard way in my life. Through health, for instance, I've suffered with eczema most of my life. And, especially being in the Adventist church, everyone thinks that they're a health guru. But anyway, so I've had every manner of solution thrown at me. And in the end, these days, when I look at people, I'm like, people, they mean well, but I often tell them now that I'm happy to play the long game. I'm happy to play the long game. Healing is slow, but when it's slow, at least I know it's going to last. Yeah. So, in that same breath, Jesus knew that 40 days in the desert was nothing compared to what was coming. 3 years of intense ministry that results in the death on the cross is nothing considering what's coming. And our dreams, our destinies are no different. Some of us lack the patience and we're taking the devil's bribes. Just because you know something's destined for you doesn't give you the right to take it when you like. So whether that be a job, position at work, some of us are conniving, manipulative, just to get something that was already promised to you. Same thing with the kingdom of heaven itself. Some of us think we can get there by manipulation on one another in the church. And why? All of us, we've all been promised the same thing. We've all been promised the same thing. Yet we manipulate, we twist and we turn as if we can jump the queue. But whether you die today or tomorrow, we're all getting there at the same time. There are 3 examples of people in scripture who are really good cautionary tales of what happens when we try to jump the queue and take shortcuts. People that didn't survive the test that Jesus survived. I think the first one that comes to mind for me is Sarah and Abraham. Abraham was promised to be a father of many nations. And God, you know what, with Abraham it's even crazier because God was very specific with his dream. There was no, flattery around it. He said, you're gonna have a son. He didn't show him, a cow in the distance and then it having a calf or something crazy. He said straight verbatim, you're having a son. And through your son, through your family, the whole world will be blessed. Now, Sarah again, like many of us, thought that, okay, when God gives me a promise, now that's my cue to make it happen. And mind you, again, sometimes God's promises to you seem simple, and that's why sometimes we take it in our own hands to try and make them happen. We quickly find out that they're not simple. So Sarah thought, I've been promised a child. We can do that. That's easy. Well, I'm old, so clearly, God, having common sense, knows I can't have children. Clearly, I need to go find a younger woman, and she ends up creating a mess that we still suffer from today. And God's a joker because, we make plans and he laughs. God watched her make a mess and said, all right, anyway, here's your son. But, here's the one I was promising you the entire time. Hope you had your fun. Now I've got to go and clean up this mess that you made. That's us. Promises we think are simple. But actually they're not so simple. If she had taken a step back, she would have seen that actually God promising elderly people children for his own glory. And actually you're cheating yourself of the process of enjoying that glory by bringing Hagar into the picture. The next example I thought of was David. A man after God's own heart. And I was always floored by the instance when God looks at David. This is just for context for those that don't know. David used his authority and power to, first of all, he was being a peeping Tom, first of all, right? And he's looking at a woman taking a bath, right? Meant to be at war, doing his job, but he's watching a woman take a bath. Her name's Bathsheba, no pun intended. And he sees her doing that, requests that she come to him, and he takes it upon himself to sleep with her. She gets pregnant. He then tries to cover that up by murdering her husband at war, right? The whole thing's very, very dark. Like, when you really think about it, it's very, very, very dark. And for all of that to happen, and then God's response to be like, why didn't you just ask me? When I was looking at that story, I was like, God, hold on, what are we trying to say? You would have just given him another wife willy-nilly. What kind of message are you trying to send to the church? And it wasn't until I reflected on it, I remembered God is a parent. How many parents here wouldn't want their children to ask them things? Even when it's things that they shouldn't be asking for. You want them to ask anyway. Because once they ask, you can redirect their desires. That's how I read that situation now in the Bible. When God says to David, why didn't you just ask me? I've given you everything. You're king over all Israel. Nothing have I withheld from you. If that was something that you wanted, if she was someone you wanted, ask me. I might not have given it. We might have had to have a dialogue, but ask me anyway. Because honesty and relationship is more important to God than being politically correct or right. And that might sound weird now, but I promise you, if you can digest that truth, your walk with God will become a lot easier. Some of you guys are not being honest with God and asking him things you think asking him things you think he wants to hear, and because of it, you have a very frustrating, fugazi and fake relationship with God, because you're not asking him the things you actually want. Be real, bad or good. Ask him. Just ask it. He will reveal your heart. If it's out of posture, you can get it in posture. But if you don't say anything, you fall into David's bracket, and then you're left with no other option but to try and devise your own dream by yourself. God said, just ask me. Preserve our relationship. Have I not earned your trust? The last example of this is going back to Jesus now. Is the Pharisees. Looking at the Pharisees. Sometimes we villainize these guys. And I have a lot of empathy for the Pharisees that killed our Lord. Because they were dreamers. Like all of us. They did what the Adventist Church takes a lot of pride in doing. Reading into prophecy. Just like us. They decided what the prophecy meant. Just like us. They created pictures in their mind about how it should manifest, just like us. To this day, I'm sure many of us have very fixed and rigid images of how things should play out in the end times. We talk about it sometimes in Sabbath school, and we fight each other about how things should manifest. Just no different from the Pharisees. And because they married themselves to a perception of who Jesus should be when he gets here, when he did arrive, they missed him, shunned him, and then crucified him. We are no different sometimes. We put God in a box. And the issue with putting God in a box is that because we are lesser than God, we put ourselves in an even smaller box by proxy. When the Pharisees saw Jesus arrive, can you blame them for wanting what they wanted? You're being oppressed by Rome. You have prophecies on prophecies of a warrior king that will come and make everything better. Can you get angry at them for seeing what they thought was a hoodlum coming out of Nazareth? And I'm saying hoodlum because Nazareth had bad reputes. Nazareth was Dudley. Do you understand? Like, that's what they looked at. A man coming out of Nazareth, no background. Jesus didn't start doing this till he was 30. So you got to think like, you spent your years working wood and suddenly you think you're the Messiah. I confess, I might have been in the ranks of the Pharisees, at least for a part of the way. It would have taken a minute to adjust my expectations. Because just like 7-year-old me, I would have been crushed. The picture that I had painted in my head, it's hard to let that go. If you've been told stories about a king like David, and Jesus turns up, let's not be self-righteous and act like we would have all jumped up and started saying, Emmanuel, welcome the king. Many of us would be distraught, and I know this for a fact because of how we treat each other. I know for a fact how we treat each other when we have expectations of each other and they fall short. The way we treat each other, you think you would have treated Jesus any different? Promise a warrior king and a man that talks to prostitutes, hangs with tax collectors, touches people he's not meant to be touching. We've got to give them some kind of grace. They were dreamers, but they had made their dreams rigid. They had caught a glimpse. The prophecies were just glimpses. Prophecies are always just glimpses. Prophecies are given to us in a language that we can understand, but it's just finite information. No, it's infinite information being given to finite beings. And so God has to break it down into symbols that we can understand. That's why Jesus was compared to David, because until Jesus arrives, there is no such thing as it, that no one had seen a Jesus before. They had no context for him. Isaiah had no context for a man like Jesus. So when he speaks of Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us, that's all he's got. That's all God can give him to help him understand until Jesus gets there and shows him what that looks like. Daniel's dreams that we are now living in, by the way, do you think Daniel had any concept of this? Of a projection? Of screens? Of microphones? Of a building like this? Yeah, no, there was no context for it. So that helps us when we read the prophecies now, we can understand, oh, actually God is condescending to us to try and help us understand something that we don't actually have the capacity to even properly understand. Our dreams are just glimpses. And so we have to, for our own sake, we have to be patient and let what will be. Our only job in the meantime is to be faithful. Amen. My very last point to end is that in that waiting period, I've discovered for myself, and I've discovered from scripture and watching how Jesus behaved, servitude is our only role up until then. In servitude, anything you ask for, it's yours. Anything you ask for. You know the verse that says, anything you ask in my name, you receive? I can't lie, when I was younger, I kind of thought God was being a bit tongue-in-cheek. I was like, okay, yeah, clearly not everything I ask for. You know, people, this is the most annoying thing about religious people sometimes. It's like, you know, people be like, oh, anything you want from God, just ask it. It's like, okay. You know, I know some of the things I want, and I know God definitely doesn't want me to have those kind of things. I can't just ask for anything. But what the Bible's hinting at is that when you and God are aligned, meaning when I submit to God, what I want, He wants. There's no separation. So whatever I want, I will get. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. When me and God are synced up, I'll get exactly what I want, even in spite of myself. David was a king in spite of his foolishness. Solomon was wise and didn't lose his wisdom, even when he was going down the wrong path. Remained wise. God is faithful when we're not. And God will not deny himself. So when you're one with himself, he can't deny you. But you have to remember that as he's with us, as he's synced up to us, he will only drip feed us that information. And you should enjoy the mystery. Enjoy the ride for what it's worth. It makes the miracles more enjoyable. And I think, candidly, I think that's why Jesus didn't mind not knowing when he got back. Because the journey's the important part anyway. Even Jesus knew that. And he had the ability to see. If he chose, he could know, I'm sure. I'm sure if God wanted to, that could be something that could be made known to Jesus. But Jesus knew that the jewelry, the gem was in the journey and not in the end result. The fatal mistake of, I am ending, I didn't forget what I said. The fatal mistake of the Israelites when they were conquering Canaan. The last Sabbath school lesson was about Canaan and Joshua, for those that were reading the Sabbath school lesson. People often take issue with the God of the Old Testament because of how God instructed them to take over the land, right? There's it's quite a graphic tale of how they took over the land. But get this, again, dreams are just glimpses. God told Abraham, I will give you Canaan, and the whole world will be blessed because of you. Notice this, his promise comes with a blessing for all people. If your dream doesn't incorporate servitude, your dream is satanic. And that's just it. If your dream doesn't incorporate serving other people, then what are you dreaming about? It has to serve people. That is also why sometimes it looks like other people are winning in life and you're not. It's because God is a father with many children. He's like a teacher with many students. He's like a prime minister with many constituents. He's got to make sure all of our dreams serve one another. And that just looks a bit messy sometimes. But if we can understand that, then we don't get frustrated when we see other people winning. You just accept that they are just one piece of your dream happening as well. Everything is working together. So quickly back to the Israelites. When they were taking over Canaan, mind you, the promise to Abraham was, I'll give you this land. And because of you, everyone else will be blessed. The dominion over Canaan wasn't about annihilating people. It was about bringing everybody into the family of God. And the initial plan involved no bloodshed. You can read it for yourself. Read it carefully. In Genesis, the initial plan, God says that people will vacate the land out of fear of me. That the beasts of the field, that is how people will leave. All I'm asking you to do is walk in. And just be yourselves. You're my people, be yourselves. Your name is Israel, which literally means he who wrestles with God. Just be you. People will watch you, know me. They'll have two choices, either join me or flee. No annihilation involved initially. It was just vacate the premises. It was not until, and in fact, then you look at the fact that he told Abraham that the Israelites would be enslaved for 400 years, but that they would return. 400 years for every other nation to get in line. So while the Israelites are busy in captivity, you know that the other nations still exist. The Hittites, Amalekites, Pezerites, all these people had time to get in line. And even after the Israelites left Egypt, when they were initially entering the land, they had time. They had the knowledge of all that God had done for Israel. And things only became a mess again when we tried to intervene. Once the Israelites refused to step into the land, God's like, all right, do it yourself then. I was going to clear it for you. But since you guys want to be like the other nations, do it yourselves. And that is how we end up with God instructing people to wipe out whole nations of people. It's not God being malicious. It's God saying, you think you know what you want. You think you know the dream, but you don't. But if you insist, make it happen yourselves. If you insist, Sarah, go on, use Hagar. If you insist, David, take Bathsheba. If you insist, Israel, wipe out the people. That is what happens when we get in the way. If you insist, Satan, try to take my place. You know, Satan's power was limitless for as long as God was in power. But he didn't see that either. As we go into 2026, I don't know what your dreams are, but whatever they are, remember God's bigger. Far bigger. And whatever you're looking at right now, don't just take it at face value. Enjoy the glimpse, enjoy the trailer, enjoy the teaser, and remain faithful. I promise you, if you stay in sync with God, whatever you've been shown will not be denied you. And whatever you think you're getting is so much better. Thank you.